Hey friends, Devin here with Backcountry Exposure. I'm going to make a little bit of a bold statement today and say that oftentimes I feel like us as backpackers get into a trap of how much weight can we save and how ultralight can we be, and we miss out on really cool pieces of gear that either create a more comfortable experience in the backcountry or they're just awesome pieces of gear to use. And I want to talk about gear for backpacking that I was wrong about. Now, this kind of comes from the fact that I either decided early on that something like a jet boil, which is something we're going to talk about in this video, was too bulky, it was too heavy, and it was too cumbersome of a stove system to use for backpacking. And I'm here to tell you that that's actually not true. There's so many cool advantages to having a system like this that we're going to talk about here in this video, but also other pieces of gear that I thought, well, that's just bulky, that's just heavy, that's just going to add to the weight of your pack. And I've kind of, over the last year, really changed my mindset to think, I want to be comfortable. I want to enjoy myself as much as possible in the backcountry. And going as lightweight as humanly possible is not always the most appropriate for the experience that I want to have in the backcountry. And I want to thank backcountry.com for sponsoring this video. You can find amazing pieces of gear from backcountry, everything pretty much that we're going to talk about today. But if you're just looking for gear in general and want competitive prices and you want to get good information on what gear makes the most sense for you, start to chat with their gearheads. Those gearheads are going to provide answers to your questions, give you all of the information that you would need for a specific backpack that you're looking for, maybe a stove system or a sleeping bag, sleeping pad, anything. If you ask the question, they're going to be able to give you suggestions and help you really define exactly what you need for the backpacking trips that you're going to go on. Okay, so the first two things that we're going to talk about are the stove system here from Jetboil. This is the Mini Mo system, and I'm going to pair it with the ceramic skillet, quick skillet from MSR. And having a system like this in your backpacking trips and everything really opens up great opportunities for you to enjoy more types of food than just dehydrated meals. You've got a fairly large pot here that would allow you to cook pastas and ramen, and you could do like a stir fry and all sorts of different kinds of things in this pot itself. And I think that sometimes, depending on what type of hiker you are, is going to determine how important food and cooking and everything is to you. If you're somebody that is doing high mileage days and the last thing that you're really concerned about is the time spent in camp, you're most likely just more concerned about getting the calories into your body and going to bed. But for a lot of us, that's not really how we do things. A lot of us like to just go and get to camp, get set up, and we spend a bit more time in camp than I think other people who have different priorities, and that's totally fine. So having something like this that is versatile, that has a pot stand here as well, that's going to essentially let you stick a fry pan on here, cook up like a quesadilla, all sorts of different kinds of things. I've made calzones and such, and this is a great option and system to have in the backcountry that really doesn't take up that much space and weight in your backpack. Now, the next piece of gear we're going to talk about has to do with sleeping pads. And for a really long time, like almost 8 years, I exclusively slept on the NeoWear X-Lite sleeping pad. And over time, I kind of realized that, I'm not getting super great sleep. And I think that investing in your sleep for backpacking is one of the most important things that you can do for your backpacking system. You need to just find what pad works best for you. And in some cases, a heavier weight pad is going to provide a better sleeping experience. And a good example is this pad right in front of me. This pad weighs about 2 pounds in weight with an R value of about 3.1, 3.2, I believe. This is the Nemo Quasar 3D sleeping pad. And no, it is not the lightest weight option on the market, but I can tell you that this has some of the best sleep qualities for me that any other pad has been able to provide, very specifically compared to the Etherlite XT from Sea to Summit, which I have raved about being an amazingly comfortable sleeping pad. So when you find something that works for you, disregard how much it actually weighs, as long as you are getting the best sleep possible. Now, I do still believe that, yes, focus on saving weight, and I'm contradicting myself a little bit here, but at the end of the day, comfort and your personal goals are what are most important. And for me, getting really good sleep for something that doesn't weigh that much more than some other options out there, I want to get literally the best sleep I can possibly get, and this sleeping pad, this hit the ticket for me starting this year. I absolutely love the sleep that I get out of the Nemo Quasar 3D sleeping pad, or the Etherlite XT as well, which also fits into that realm of a little bit heavier and bulk, but you just can't complain about good sleep from a good sleeping pad. Now, the last piece of gear that we're going to talk about is something that I had written off as just silly and not necessary for taking on a backpacking trip, and that has to do with a sleeping bag liner. I've always had the idea that, like, if you're going to sleep in colder temperatures, just take a lower degree rated sleeping bag and don't bother with the fuss of a sleeping bag liner. And I finally decided, you know what, get on board with how awesome these actually are. And one of the things that kind of like deterred me from wanting to use a sleeping bag liner is the fact that it always seemed like, well, that's just going to get tangled up and be messy and like twisted and stuff and constrictive inside of a sleeping bag. And as I've been using this Sea to Summit sleeping bag liner, I have actually noticed a significant difference in how I sleep in colder temperatures in general. So using a sleeping bag liner like this, it really does do what people claim it to do. It adds warmth to your sleeping bag. And as I've been using this for several nights so far, I haven't noticed an extreme amount of getting twisted and issues with being in the sleeping bag. And in fact, with my ZenBivy system that I'm using this weekend, using this inside, it actually helps quite a bit in terms of any potential kind of draft points that come from the light bed from the ZenBivy, which is not an enclosed full sleeping bag. This helps ensure that I stay extra warm inside of my sleeping bag and bring my degree rating down just a little bit more to ensure that I'm comfortable at those temperatures that I need to be comfortable at. So everybody, the point that I'm making in this entire video is it's okay to be wrong about gear and to make assumptions and think, that's not gonna work for me. But there are really so many great pieces of gear out there that we could be using that maybe weigh a little bit more. They're a little bit more bulky, or they cost a little bit more. Whatever the situation is, there's so many cool options out there of gear items that are worth using that don't necessarily fall into that quote unquote ultralight mindset of you have to have a 10-pound base weight or less to have a good time in the backcountry. I've really had my eyes open to that not being the only way to get out and backpack and have a good time in the backcountry. It's all about your goals, what you are trying to accomplish, and use the gear that allows you to accomplish and complete those goals that you have. So thanks for watching. Thank you to backcountry.com for sponsoring today's video. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you on the next one.